I am so sorry to say this, but The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson suffers from middle book syndrome. You're about to watch me read The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, where I'll be updating you periodically with my thoughts as I'm reading the book. The Well of Ascension. This book, I don't even think I read half of it, to be honest. I think I read like the first 100 pages 10 years ago, but I couldn't get into it because I was still too devastated about what happened in the first book. So I don't really know what this book is going to cover, and so I'm really excited because now it's kind of like, it feels a lot newer, a lot fresher now to me, because I don't really like to reread books, and now it's not, I don't really count this as rereading if I only read like 100 pages, if that makes sense. So from my understanding, The Well of Ascension follows the events from the first Mistborn book. Lord Ruler is dead, and that turned out to be the easy part, because for whatever, I don't even know like how that works, but the deepness that the Lord Ruler was supposedly had gotten rid of, I imagine is probably like creeping its way in here now. So Vin and friends are probably going to be looking for this Well of Ascension, because that's what the original like Hero of Ages was supposed to go into before he was like killed. And so I think that the journey of this book is probably going to be following around like rebuilding the society now that the Lord Ruler is gone, and trying to figure out where this Well of Ascension is so they can stop the deepness. So let's crack this book right open and get to reading.
Eyes bloodshot and I'm faded now. I try calling to persuade you how I'm a changed man with a new plan, making moves, making big moves like I rule the whole damn galaxy. So tell me, are you starry-eyed? If you are, would you be by my side? I'm a changed man with a new plan, making moves, making big moves. It's my test.
I just finished part 1 of The Well to Ascension, and here are my thoughts so far. So this book takes place 1 year after the main events that we learned about in Mistborn itself. Now, as I mentioned before, no spoilers about what happens in this book, but there will be spoilers from Mistborn, the first book in the series. So I would say that this first part actually wasn't that good. It felt a little bit too much like it was reminding you about every single thing that happened, which I guess is fair because these books do take a while to come out, but as somebody who just read the first book and then immediately read the second one, I'm like, yeah, I already know this, I don't care. So that was kind of rough to get through, but the way that this part ended is definitely going in the right direction. So I definitely believe that as I continue to read in the rest of the parts of this book, it is going to pick up, because there's a little bit of hint about kind of where the story is going and how the relationships are established between all of the characters, but it was a little bit too much exposition for me in the beginning. However, knowing that there are 6 parts in this book, which is definitely bigger than its predecessor, I have hope that this will continue to go along on the right path. I am a little bit surprised because usually like Brandon Sanderson does a really good job of just like hooking you in there and keeping you hooked there while you're reading. So I know like this is one of his earlier works, so perhaps that's why the exposition feels like it drags on a little bit too much. But I'm still excited to read, so I will continue to read The Well of Ascension, and I will update you when I finish this part, so I will see you then. I just finished part 2 of Mistborn, and this one definitely is picking up a little bit more than the first part. I am finding it still a little bit too slow, but there's still some really interesting things that are happening, specifically the Colas, or Colas. And they're basically like these really, really tall, saggy creatures, and they're incredibly violent. And what's interesting about them is that they start off like with really saggy skin, and then as they get older, they like grow into their skin and grow like taller, and then eventually their skin like splits because they're too big now for their skin. It's like really weird, but it's like really creative, and I'm like, oh, interesting, kind of creepy, kind of cool, I like it. There was also some really cool insights that Sazed had discovered in terms of like what the world was like before the Lord Ruler, so that to me is definitely the most interesting part of this part, learning more about that, and then how each chapter starts off with like a written form of somebody's journal. This is from like the person who had identified the Hero of Ages. And what I think is interesting is that a lot of these things mentioned kind of seem like they relate to Elend. Is that what his name is? I feel like I've never said this man's name out loud. Elend. And it's really fun to follow along Elend as he's evolving into his new role and learning and growing. And then Vin interacting with Zane is really interesting. Zane is he's a very interesting character. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to read from his perspective because like he does some like pretty uncomfortable things to himself, which I feel like there should be like a trigger warning for this book for SH, but yeah, it is still pretty interesting though. And then my headcanon right now is that Elend is going to be kind of like the new hero of ages, and maybe not, maybe it's Vin, like I feel like more likely it's Vin, but because he seems to match what this guy was like writing in the journals like per chapter on like the little above the chapter section, I'm like, interesting that it kind of like mentions who he is and like kind of how that relates to him as a character. So I don't know if there's anything in there or if I'm just like I don't know, just guessing, because I feel like as like a book, Vin is the main character, so it probably is Vin, especially because of like what she can hear and see and all the stuff involved in the mist that's happening right now, which that's another thing that I really like about this part. And I feel like it's continuing to kind of like pick up. I would say that this one is not nearly as exciting as the first one, but it is building a lot of it's establishing a lot more about like the world and the army and the politics and like how all of that works. So it makes sense, but it is definitely like a little slower than I would like, but I'm still enjoying it. So I'm going to continue to read The Well of Ascension, which we still haven't even seen The Well of Ascension yet. But yeah, I'm going to continue to read The Well of Ascension and I will update you when I finish this part. So I will see you then. I just finished part 3 of The Well of Ascension, and I think that this part was definitely a lot better than the previous part. I mentioned before that part felt a little bit slow to me, and this one had a little bit more action. This one had more of that kind of investigation. It had a lot of great character development, especially with Sazed character. And okay, I'm taking back what I said previously about Elend, or Elend, however you say his name, about him being the hero of ages. No. I think it's Sazed. I now think that it's Sazed, because one of the parts that I missed was like, came from humble origins. Whereas like, Elend obviously didn't, like he was a nobleman, but Sazed did. And Sazed has always been inclined to like rebel against this and investigate this. And it's because of him that they really did collapse the Lord Ruler. So this is my new theory, that it's Sazed. And that would be amazing because we love Sazed. And another thing that was mentioned in the first Mistborn book about this hero of ages is that they thought it would be like a terraceman. And that was one of the things that had the Lord Ruler really mad at this guy who was like, said, this is the hero of ages. And like, I remember the Lord Ruler was like, yeah, like this guy's not a terraceman, but Sazed is. So that's my theory now. It was also really cool to learn about the mist, a little bit more about the backstory and like the origins of the world that they're still trying to figure out, because we know the Lord Ruler had just like eliminated all of that information. So the characters kind of learning about it, discovering, questioning, creating these theories, all of that I think is really, really interesting. I think for me, the part of this book that I don't really like, and don't get me wrong, I like the character, but I just find that Elend's story is really, really dry for me. I think maybe it's just a little bit too many, like maybe a little bit too much political mentions of it, not enough action. I don't really know what it is about it, but his chapters just feel, I don't know. I don't know if this is like a super unpopular opinion. I'm gonna get roasted in the comments for this, but yeah, I think that's what it is. I just don't really like his chapters that much. But I love all the other chapters. I love Sazed chapters. I love Vin's chapters. That one chapter with Breeze was so good. I really loved that one. And really just all the other characters. And it's not that I don't like Elend either. I think that he is like a good guy. He's a nice person. I just find his story a little bit dull for me. Something that's really cool about this book though is definitely like Kelsier's influence. Even though we know he's no longer around, he still created such a big wave in the entire country. And he ended up creating like this church, and that church is super important, and how it reflects into the politics and like all of this. I'm like, that is so fun. I honestly love characters who, he's not really haunting the storyline, but like, you know the saying, like characters who haunt the storyline because they're constantly there even when they're not. And Kelsier's character does that. So I think that that's really cool, and that's something I really like about this book. But I just don't find it as exciting as Mistborn at the moment. So those are kind of my thoughts right now, where I'm at. We had the vote for who's going to be the kin that happened. So that was interesting. I actually didn't expect that to happen, like the way that that chapter ended. And then we had a really good fight scene with Vin, and just like some character development that we obviously love. So excited to see like where the rest of this is going to go. There's 6 parts of this one, so I will see you when I finish the 4th part. So I will see you then. Last night I finished part 4 of the Well of Ascension, and that's what I'm talking about. The reveals, the fights, the tension, the revelations, like this, that's what I was looking for. I found like a lot of this book to be really slow. It was paced just like, felt like it was really dragging on, but that part, yes, okay. I'm really excited, and then I'm also really excited for part 5 and then part 6, and I have high hopes again because like it really is picking up, and it's like, yes. I love Sazed so much, and everything that he does, he's just so selfless. Like he thinks he's selfish, but he's not. I love that he says I think all the time. I think that's just like really cute and adorable, and I really like him, and I just want to like protect him at all costs because he's the most precious, intelligent, strong character, and I love that we've been getting his perspective in this book so much because he's my favorite character. I'm a little bit confused about what happened with Zane there. Like, I don't know, maybe it will be revealed in the next couple chapters, but is he like I don't get what was under his jacket. Like I feel like I didn't understand that, and like I have an idea, but I'm not really sure, but maybe I'll find out later. I thought maybe there was gonna be some kind of reveal for that, but it just seemed like it was like kind of mentioned and then it wasn't, and I don't really know what that was about, and I don't know, I feel really confused. But I love the action. I love the characters growing and developing and stepping outside of the comfort zones. I think that this part really captured that, and this part was definitely the best so far in the whole book. So I'm going to continue to read The Well of Ascension. They are hopefully on their way to find the Well of Ascension now. So I will update you when I finish this part, so I'll see you then. I just finished part 5 of The Well of Ascension, and similarly to part 4, the action is going, the characters are doing things, sad things are happening, heartbreak, fights, all of this, and Sazed needs to be protected. I'm still going with my theory that Sazed is the hero of ages. It just makes so much sense. Like, I know that like Vin's kind of our main character, and it most likely is her, but I'm going with my theory that it's Sazed. He just matches all of the details like so well. So yeah, I'm still going with that. I also really like Vin's character development within the past like 2 or so parts. At the beginning of the book, I felt like this was just like really drawn out, and she was kind of annoying me at times, and she was like, I mean, it's understandable like why she was so indecisive, and she didn't really understand like who she was and like what her path is. But I feel like she just took way too long to learn that. Whereas in the first book, she had really great paced character development from being like really scared to like learning how to be a little bit more confident and how to trust people. Whereas in this one, it just felt like it dragged on until like this moment. And I'm like, yes, character development, that's what we like. I also really like the chapters with Straff, getting his perspective. And it's like, ugh, gross. What a gross thought that this, like, ugh, just everything about that guy. It makes you not like him even more, and he does it really well. Like, Brandon Sanderson, like, writes a character that's just, like, so disgusting. I'm definitely saddened about the events that took place in this kind of event that happened in this part. More so with one of the gates and the character in the snow. That's what I'm the most sad about, which is weird because, like, you would think the other characters I may be a little bit sadder about, but like, it's still sad, but not as sad as the snow area. So that's where I am right now. I have one more part to go, and it's like a really, really short part. Like, yeah, like, I think it's like less than like 30 pages, to be honest, of this part. So I am excited to see kind of how it's going to wrap up, how it's going to be setting up for the third and final book of the original trilogy. So I'm going to continue to read The Well of Ascension, and I'm going to update you when I finish the book with my final thoughts. So I will see you then. I just finished The Well of Ascension, and it definitely did not meet my expectations until like the last 300 pages, I would say. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely am going to be reading the third book. Those last 300 pages were just like beautiful, exactly like what I love so much about Brandon Sanderson's writing, the reveals, the surprises, the deaths, the battles, the magic, all of this stuff. However, I felt that the rest, like the first 500 pages of this book, were really slow and drawn out, and like my eyes, I felt like were glazing over at some point, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, I have never felt this way about a Brandon Sanderson book, and I really hope I'm not the only person. Like, maybe there's something, I don't know, maybe there's something I'm just not understanding, or maybe it's the politics of it, which I don't know. Like, I like politics in books, so I don't really know what it was. Perhaps it was just the expectations that the first book was so action-packed, we knew where the story was going, we had a goal. Whereas the first 500 pages didn't really feel like there was a goal. There was a bunch of different like sub-goals happening, like, okay, we want to protect the people of the city, we want to make sure that Elend is like the kin guy and like he's in charge of all these people, and there's also like a secret spy in there that they want to like uncover. But a lot of those things didn't really happen until later, especially the spy portion of it. So I don't know, like, I feel like it was just too drawn out. I think that this book could have been more compressed, and it would have been better for at least me as a reader. And again, this is just my opinion. I will say though, I definitely love the character development of Elend's character. I really loved just following along the other like side characters, especially Breeze. Like, Breeze really took the show with this book. I don't really know why I'm just so like attached to him, but I'm like, Breeze, like, I think it's because he's just like, he's such a softie underneath, and I just, you know, I can't not deal with that. And so whenever you have like Breeze's chapters, I'm like, yes, this is great. I found that I didn't really care too much about Doxan's story. He felt like he was kind of forgotten about, in all honesty. In the first book, he was relevant, he did stuff, but then it felt like he was a completely different character, which Vin actually does note at one point, so like, I know it's intentional. But I don't know, I just didn't really care about his story that much, but there was some really nice moments with Clubs and Breeze. That was really fun, really nice, super, like, just heartwarming. And all the scenes that Sazed has with every single character, those are so good. Sazed is like the best. I love that man. And so I think that's also what makes that ending so good for me, and so emotional, and so raw. And it's like these characters that I do really care about, and now they're in this really bad, difficult, tough situation that it's not really their fault, but like, you know, it's a really good setup. I'm really excited for the third book. I have high expectations because of like how good the first book was and how good the last 300 pages of this book were, and just because of my experience with Brandon Sanderson as an author. I love his writing. I definitely think that Stormlight Archive is done better, but that's also him more as a more matured author who's like really honing in his craft. He's written like so many books before then, so I do think that these books are still written very, very well, but this one definitely drags on a little bit, whereas his like 1600 page books, I never really found them like too draggy. Maybe The Way of Kins for a little bit, but all the other ones were like so just like compelling. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am going to be awarding The Well of Ascension a total of 3.5 stars. It was almost a 3-star read for me, but like I mentioned, those last 300 pages really just increased the rating for me. It got me really excited. I love the big reveals. I love the characters changing because of the events that they've gone through. That's so good. Like he writes such good realistic characters in such realistic worlds that you just can't help but be obsessed. So that was a pretty big book. That was like an 800 pager, which compared to some of his other books, not big, but it did take me a couple of days to read that, so I will be reading just a little bit of a shorter book before I read the final book in the original trilogy. So I will be reading Shadows of Light by Brenda K. Davies. This is the 6th book in the Shadow Realm series that I'm also reading alongside Brandon Sanderson. These books are much shorter, so you know, sometimes you just want to read a little short book and then go back into the long form ones, so this is what I will be reading next. So if you're interested in watching me read the rest of the Mistborn series, the original and the new, as well as Brenda K. Davies' Shadow Realm series, definitely hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoyed this video, and if you're happy that I finally know who Sazed is, I had a couple comments saying like, that Sazed guy? I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, like, forgive me. I appreciate Sazed now. If you love Sazed, definitely hit the like button and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!